guys, we have a lot to go over. I'm going to turn it over to Paul right away. I really do think a lot of you, I'm just going to go through this thing here. I do think that a lot of you were on, um, geesh, a lot of you were on the lemonade. So this is awesome. I'm gonna give it right over because I don't need to repeat myself. You know about everything. You know about the upcoming conference. Guys, if you are a PT, there's a lot of peds on here. The peds are super active. I wish all my adult PT people were as, you guys got spoiled. If you're an adult PT practice, you got spoiled. There is so much stuff out there. Every day there's a click funnel, how to scale your practice, do this, do that, get more patients, all this stuff. I'm going to tell you, Survival Strategies was the firstest with the mostest. They were coming at you 36 years ago. That's how Paul found us. Paul, like Diane, did all of our programs, but the peds had nothing. People, including us, thought, oh my gosh, they're just like every other private practice. We don't need to be specific to them. And so we weren't. And then, come to really find out that like private practice is its own animal, pediatric is its own species. So we spun off and we did this whole thing. But they're so highly involved and they're so highly engaged that I really, if there are any adult PTs on here, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to beg you to be like a paloozie and get all this information that you can, because these guys are growing. There's some of them are stopping the limping and the dragging the foot across the floor. Like their practices are starting to really boom. Then we've got other ones that already were in a great place and now they're killing it. And guys, we just talked about how we don't want to be any Nelly negatives, but when you look at the stuff that private practice faces, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what all else can y'all go through? Like 4 waves of COVID, diminishing reimbursements, hard to hire, and then the cyber attack. It's like, what all else? I'm gonna tell you, this is not me being Ellie negative. There's gonna be more stuff because that's life. Life's it's lifing. Your voicemail on your phone doesn't think, should I pick up this call? Should I not? It's just wired to pick up the call. Life is just wired to like throw stuff at you. How you handle it, how you recover, how you are stable enough to to withstand it, that's on you. It's on us to bring it to you, but it's on you to participate. So with that said, just know there's other stuff coming. So the fact that most of you are on 1 hour and another hour shows me you're serious. But sometimes, and I don't even see too many on here, the adult PTs are like, oh, there's a click funnel. Oh, there's a free template. Yeah, there's a free template. It's not a lot of real help, but it does get your email and then they can bombard you with a lot of stuff. Not that emailing people is bad. Communication is excellent. It is good, but just know who your source is. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to an amazing source. I'm going to turn it over to Paul Silovsky. You gotta evaluate who you're listening to. You gotta evaluate who you're listening to. There's a lot of friendly people in our group, and they'll reach out, and you gotta just evaluate. Are they where I am, which means it'll be reciprocal, or are they where I want to be, which means they can help you, but then you want to also reciprocate and find somebody slightly under you so you can pay it forward. That's my little public service announcement. I'm going to turn the rest over to this fabulous man, Paul Silovsky, owner of Rebound Physical Therapy. He's a PT in Topeka, Kansas. He got his practice boomed where he can live in Nashville, Tennessee, be with his family, do things that are really super important to him and his wife with the grandkids, yada, 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 and has this booming practice. I don't know, how far is Topeka from, I don't even know that. I'm geographically not in the know. How far is Topeka from
I don't know
Nashville?
the exact miles. It's an hour and a half flight. It's about a 9 hour drive. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah. If you
So
were
not
to,
around the corner. You're not dropping, you have to get on a flight or drive a day. Okay. Got it.
so yeah, so 500 miles away. Um, Yeah.
Yeah. So he did that. So that's a good thing for some of you that are like, we want to have more of a life too someday. This is how you do it. You listen to people like Paul Silovsky. So, Paul, I'm going to let them listen to you. I'm going to shut up now.
Okay. Hey, just out of curiosity, Nancy. So thanks for
Yeah.
the intro. But what was covered today on the in the lemonade? I was preparing slides.
Oh, what was
So
too busy? This is what was covered, Diane. It was great. Too busy to build into me and my team. And we actually added something which was really great. And I'm sure it'll be Silovsky approved. We added in a little implementation in the middle. So everybody wrote down their list of all the tasks that they do, all the tasks they do. You know, these CEOs do a lot of tasks. And then she had them go through and check off the ones they hate to do, just hate to do it with an X. And then the ones that they are kind of still good at, but they still do, but they would like to turn over, whatever. It was really great. I thought it was really informative. And as you know, Diane, we don't have junk giving you guys advice. We have quality people. So Diane was, as usual, amazing. And we know you're going to be amazing. So here we go.
yeah, well, thank you. So this one, I tend to put some of these together. I mean, some are by, I love to hear by survey, by the way, what folks want to hear or know or hear about. This one, was put together as an extension of the last one where I got it. I really covered putting the product into productivity because I'm a big advocate of managing backwards from products. We all, per what Nancy just went over, we all have a lot on our plate. So you have to lean into the things that are going to, matter the most to your practice and your either your survival or your freedom or whatever it is that you're whatever you're pushing for. I was pushing towards greater freedom. I didn't, have acute plans to move to Nashville, Tennessee necessarily, but it definitely, it aids my wife and I's survival to be around our kids and family and whatnot. And it's a beautiful place, but I'm still responsible for this organization here in Topeka. That's where I'm at right now. This is my week back here, working with my guys. So I tend to look at the things that I solve, and in the process of solving in my own company, because I still have to, continue to build my team. And as Nancy said, whether it's delegation or in my case, it's more training and having other people, scaling their abilities. And just like I did when as a PT, I was just increased ability of my patients, and now I'm doing it with my staff and my executive teammates. So I put this one together. I'll pull the slides up here in a moment. I went through it again right before I logged on here. There might even be a section here I might eliminate as I go if it's too significant. Because really, what I want to impart on you guys is, because I see this as a real thing. I've talked to thousands of owners, but I'm in communication with a lot of owners still now, just on my own accord. And not just practice owners, lots of business owners. I run an effective management association back in Nashville. It's a volunteer thing, and we use Harvard management systems. Guys that use these management tools, and it's really fascinating to me because we do this every week. We get together every week, businesses from across different sectors. I wasn't there for the meeting this week, but we had a guy speaking on marketing last night at a hotel in Nashville, and I listened to what folks are running into, and this subject of just getting things done, getting production occurring in your organization, and making it a viable level of production. We're going to go into those two concepts. So while I might dive into a couple specific, things or handlings. Look for the far-reaching things here before I start. Look for the things that you can take back and apply. But there's some basic principles I operate off of, and I think this is why Nancy has me present sometimes, because what I cover, you might go away and go, "Oh, that seems pretty basic." Well, yeah, exactly, because I'm into making things simple, and I want a simple way of looking at things and thinking with them, because when you engage with your executives and your staff, it needs to be super simple. If it's not, you're probably, they're probably going to get lost. And so while I'm going to say a lot, look for those simple things, and I'll tell you what they are. There's a few things that are bolded and highlighted and all that. But so bear with me here while I pull this up. Do I have, like, I have screen share abilities now? Yep, looks like I do. Okay, good. Good. From the beginning. This is more to guide the conversation, to keep me on track. This is more for me than you, the slides, to keep me from, because hey, Nancy, I have this goal, because I'm doing this with some of the other lectures that I do. I'm doing another one tonight on predicting human behavior and the emotional 10 scale. I'm doing it to a different group, right? And I have like 3 or 4 slides for that one, and I really like just freewheeling it and just using the data. But here it is, I'm using this for a guide. But I'm going to start with definitions like I normally do. I love words. I love clearing them up. So these are management definitions. So if we're going to connect production to the viability of your organization or any organization, right? Let's look at what they actually mean. So here's some management definitions of production. Last time we covered product, but here's production. The act of completing something, super freaking important, right? So this is super important for you and your staff to understand. It's like, there's one thing to look productive or be busy, right? There's a whole other thing to complete things. So, you want to complete something. That is, what we're going for in production, okay? Or finishing a task, project, or object that is useful or valuable or simply worth doing or having. That's where the viability comes in, is how valuable is it, and is it worth doing or having? So it is a great way to make decisions on what's important week to week, month to month, inside of a division, inside of a department. You guys are operating the whole organization as CEOs or owners. We may have some managers on here, some executives over here, in here, managing a particular division or section of a division of your company. So, you really have to dial in every area of your company, what's going to be most useful or most valuable. And then, bringing forth, making or causing. We're into causing things. If you're running a production unit, you're causing things to happen, right? So that's pretty simple definition, I think. But the most important line for me is the first one. It's the act of completing something. Okay, was it done? Was it completely done? I'm not going to go through divisions of an organization here today and help you decide necessarily what's a completed product or what's it done for every area, but you should definitely do that. That's a task list to make sure that folks can look at things that are done. And then viability, one of my major products. I definitely want a profitable and productive company, right? But super important that it's viable. Okay, and we're going to get into the concept of viability here. It just says the state of being capable of supporting itself and thus staying alive. Really important for me because I'm not here, 75, 80% of the time, or physically here. I'm definitely still engaged with my guys week to week and have my exec meetings every week like normal, and it's just over phone or Zoom. But, this thing has to stay alive and stay viable because of the actions that are occurring, day to day, week to week with my guys. So viability means capable of living or growth. The thing I'm working on the most personally is just growth. I get in a bad mood if we're not growing, or scaling. I think my next month thing is going to be on scalability. We'll go over a particular tool, a really simple formula for scalability. But it's one of my products, right? I'm not done until this organization just continues to grow on its own, without me having to press. Because the thing I press on is growth and viability, where it just perpetuates itself because of the people here, and because the organization is so well oiled that it just will go ad infinitum whether I'm here or not. So it's taken from the Latin vita, right? I think of vitamins, right? Vita means life. So that's cool, right? It's lifeable. If it's viable, it's lifeable. It can sustain itself. Viability depends in the main upon exchange. Really important in the looking or the evaluation of all your products, your organization. So it's depends upon, in the main, upon exchange where economics are concerned. Okay, the exchangeability of what you do. Important point here: the group does not necessarily live on what it self produces. Okay, we produce, you know, increased ability in some way, shape, or form, or a better life, or, you know, function, whatever, however you want to frame that up. I've seen it, you know, communicated so many different ways. Well, you know, being able to produce that doesn't, you know, pay your bills, obviously, unless you get paid. Or if we were making, you know, lithium batteries or something like that, it's like, well, okay, you know, I can't just go walking around with batteries and necessarily, or I can't go walking around with this skill as a physical therapist and just automatically get paid for it. I have to, you know, produce something that's valuable and exchangeable with the public. You know, because it's hard for me to go into Home Depot if I want to build something at home this weekend and say, hey, I'm a physical therapist. How can we make a deal here? Right? It's just, I've got to get recompense for what I do, and I'm going to get paid, and then go get paid enough to go build whatever I want to build, or do whatever I want to do, or, you know, trade with whoever I want to trade with. So that viability, you know, we're doing this with, I don't know, you know, everybody's on here's got a different level of staffing, but, you know, all your folks are dependent upon us being able to exchange what we do for a valuable. So, but it has to be enough of it to pay everybody, which is the challenge right now, particularly in the economy right now. It just blows my mind when I travel and eat out and stuff like that. I'm like, what's happening? What's this is just me. I'm not feeding my whole family anymore. But it seems like it sometimes when I just do a simple meal with myself or a coworker or something like that. It's like, wow, it's getting, this viability thing is becoming even tougher right now. But so here's just some key organizational points to look at. These aren't my main points. I'm sharing some really simple data for with you guys here. There's three common factors in every group. Every business, every group have these three things. They got people, they've got a service or a product that they are providing, and there's fun, there needs to be funds involved for it to, you know, sustain or be viable. The viability obviously is going to come from all three of those things, but if you don't have that exchange in there, because we all rely on funds, right? So we all got people, we all have a product, in our case, or a service, and, you know, we're doing it to get paid. And, you know, we would expect for sure that for that to occur, right? And this is almost like a triangle, if you will. You know, as you expand one of these areas, as you add people, you better be providing more services and collecting more funds, or this thing's going to shrink. It's going to die. You know, those three components. This is like a triangle for a group. It's people, services, and funds. And as an executive or a CEO, you're working very hard to balance these three things out and expand them together. Ideally, because it says here should. Ideally, this would grow as you add people and as you increase the services or the production. You should collect more funds. Now that doesn't always happen. Anybody affected by CHC, right? The whole Change Healthcare thing. You can have your people, you can provide service, and then not get paid for it. You know, and we've definitely experienced that within our organization for sure. So here's some, you know, these are just some simple principles here. This isn't a specific pathway on this particular slide, but I am going to get to some key basics here. But check this out. You know, like I said in the beginning, you always want to manage backward from a product or products. So we're tying your production to your viability, right? So you really have to dial into well-defined products for your company. Those of you that are working with consultants, you've already done this. If you haven't, you can get help from Survival Strategies on this. You know, something as simple as your organizing board, your organizing chart for your organization to segment, you know, who's producing what and exactly what those products are. But, you know, always manage backward from a viability product too. I'm going to show you some specifics here a little later. So I'm interested. I want to be able to look at the chat here. So I want to, I want to see what from the top level managers, or the CEOs or the owners, what your most important measurable products are that determine your viability. So if folks can, I'm going to go over to the chat myself here and look, like just type into the chat, what are some of your most important or your um, priority measurable products that you look at, that you're measuring, measurable products. It can be, obviously, gross income can be one of them, but what are some things you guys look at? Just put them in the chat really quick. It's not a test or anything like that. I'm just curious. It just gives me a perspective of what I should be talking about through the rest of the talk, or what I can dial into. Billable hours and gross income. Good. So that's on the finance and the servicing side, right? The people, funds, and services. Um, New patients, perfect. We'll definitely get into that. Billable hours. So, okay, so it looks like so far, billable hours, adequate staff. I'd love to have a measurable for that. Having enough staff to increase it, right? That's what I'm in that ball game too. We definitely want more staff. It's our single factor holding that. Okay, everybody's advanced schedule, percent arrivals for billable hour projections. Excellent. Good. So everybody's really leaning into how much service they're providing here. So thank you for that. We don't have to have necessarily everybody. I just wanted to get a consensus. Survey says billable hours. So as certainly one of the most important measurable products is determining your viability. If you're delivering billable hours and making the assumption that you can get paid for it, if you're not dealing with change, oops. Highly recommended, obviously, you assign a product or products to every person in your company. Every person in your company should have a measurable, and they should be told what's most important, and how it affects not only the organization's viability, but their personal viability, which is really, really important to connect it to them personally. So you need to predetermine the viability level of every post product. It needs to be known how much of that product they need to produce, but also how it's going to affect them personally, as well as the company. It needs to be predetermined, what's going to make it worthwhile. It's not just a made up number. They need to know where that comes from. And then you have to, and your executive or your executive team have to manage the volume or the quantity off of that viability number. It's funny. For your practice, we're going to dive into this more deeply in a second, but it's really critical that I like to back in from the finance side. I start with the viability. What is, I can think back into when I first started, and what I had as an initial target, not as a long-term target necessarily, but what would make this worth my time. And every time that I've opened something new, like I had a sports performance business for several years. I had one in Wichita and had one in Kansas City. At the same time as I had my practice, I had a clinic in Albuquerque, New Mexico for 3 years. And every one of those entities, I had an expectation or a target that I set off of the viability. I thought, what would make it worth my time? I said, okay, $5,000 a week would make it worth my time. Okay. And what I mean by that is, $250,000 a year, not in necessarily gross income either, by the way. It's like, okay, if I were going to hold on to this thing, if I were going to make it something worthwhile, what would I want it to be at least? And that was kind of my make break. Everything I go into, I would want to personally, right, say, okay, the viability level for me would be $5,000 in net profitability to make it worth doing. So that's the same with opening a new program or an activity, my pool, or opening up a new division of the company. We're going towards that. I'm not saying everything that I'm doing is doing that. I'm just saying that that's what's going to make it, viable, so I can have other people, I can pay other people to do it. I'm not saying that I would even get paid all that $250,000. I'm just saying that there'd be $250,000 of profitability. Now I have something significant to share with others. So I'm using that example to say manage backwards, from the product, but also manage backwards from the level of viability of this thing. How lifeable how sustainable can this thing be, and what needs to be there in order to make it, so. And so I start backwards from there and go, good. Well, how many sports performance, how many new athletes would I have to train every week? How many new patients would I need to fill my pool up? How many we do massage. We've got a couple of massage therapists, and they're clipping along. They're clipping along at about 200,000 a year right now. There's two of them, and when we add that third, we'll crack up over that gross volume easily of a quarter million. But that has its own level of viability to it based upon that volume, right? So it's tying that production to the viability. But I'm always working backwards from the viability number. So I'm managing the volume of what would make it viable for our practice. And then quite frankly, I do quality second. I'm always quality minded, but had I came out as a new PT and thought that I had to be great before I could see a lot of people, I think I would be really dead in the head. I'm glad I never had that viewpoint. I saw a lot of freaking patients. I still see more patients than any of my therapists. I saw more patients over the years, not just in the beginning, particularly when I started my practice. But even before that, I was seeing a lot of people, and I got good. I got good before I, over only after seeing a lot of people is the point. So I'm not disqualifying quality, but I'm not negating it. I'm just saying that I have never found anybody that was really good at what they did till they did it a lot. And they may have been good hard. They may have got great. They still get good outcomes, but I definitely manage that one second. I get the quantity up, and the quantity up at a level where everybody in the organization can get paid. So, and these next series of slides, I'm going to go through kind of quickly because they're not minor points, but I don't want to just hang up on them too much. But they're an extension of what I just covered. The first slide was more important in dialing in this quantity and quality and viability concept. Some of you guys that have done the management program have been introduced to that, but it's a live practical. It's not just a data. It's not just a piece of information or data. It is something you really have to lean into and know cold exactly what your viability level is every week, every day, every month. I don't wait until the end of the month to figure out whether what we're doing is viable. We're always leaning into it. It's very well known. So you have to determine the exact level of viability for both the quantity that we're talking about and that quality factor. Yeah, quality is important. I never discount it. I just assume we're going to do quality work, right? You have to go in and look at it and evaluate it for sure. But that value of the service, has to be commensurate with the level of exchange. If you deliver a high quality visit, you should expect to get paid well for it as well. So you should know and determine what that exact level of production, that quantity and quality needs to be in order to receive the appropriate recompense for that, right? And I know, we can think that it's determined by the insurance companies, but as soon as you've signed the contract, you've agreed to that level. So you're locked into whatever it's going to take to meet your expectations as far as profitability, and the same thing for your staff and their level of pay. So you should have good financial and value-based reasons for yourself, on what you guys are currently getting paid, how much production is occurring, for your company as a whole, for your staff, and for your publics, all the different public you service, right? You're delivering these goods and services. You have these people, you have these services or these products, and you have these funds that result from that. And you really have to understand how valuable that is. And I'm setting this up for one of the main drivers. This is the next slide, but one of the main drivers is driven by those expectations. That's why I highlighted them. So don't get too caught up in the exactness or debating over what determines quality in the beginning. When you're calculating out an algorithm of what your viability needs to be, what's going to make it worth your time, what's going to make it so you can go do your Nashville gig or whatever. Maybe it isn't, living away from your practice. Maybe you want to be, there every day and controlling it and doing all that. And that's great. maybe you're into still treating. That's awesome. But you may have to turn over the executive functions, whatever that is. But I don't get into, you still have to figure out as an owner, and for that long-term viability to get you where you want to go and get your staff where they are going to stay and be well paid and all that. I don't debate quality a lot because staff will bring that up anyway, right? I think it would be assumed. I've told this story before. I went over this with somebody, I forgot who it was recently that I was meeting with, and I don't even remember if it was one of my therapists because I talk to different people every week, but it's really not even necessary. Oh, I think it was a student. I think it was a student that was interviewing us not last month. But it's really funny. I've never seen a patient walk in the door and think or expect that they were going to. They've never asked to see the most average therapist. They don't ask for the average producer or the average person that's going to get an average product with them, right? They expect someone good and someone that gets great outcomes. So I don't really think it's a debatable subject. You have to definitely tell them whether they're doing well or not. It's part of our job, but I don't tend to defend doing enough volume to care for a lot of people. So you have to, at the same time, you do have to exactly determine the collectible value required for each of your visits or episode of care to cover those viability expectations. But I'm also giving you guys license to go, look, set big goals, set big expectations for the profitability or the viability of your company, to have a well-paid staff, to have a well-serviced public, and to take care of a lot of people, because it's really tough to be profitable without getting bigger, be as profitable as you could be without getting bigger. So don't be afraid to expect and demand profits. You guys that have been on some of my financial talks before, it's like, the number one expense in my company is profits. That's it. It's number one. It's maybe not the top thing, but it's the number one thing. It's the number one expense. While payrolls are all of our largest expenses, I know in life, taxes is my biggest pain in the ass and expense, right? But I pay a higher percentage of taxes than any other factor, any other expense in my domain. So I have, but I have to pay taxes because I have profits. But as a percentage of expenses for me personally, right? So I expect and demand profits. I expect more viability. I don't any longer expect $250,000. We passed that one up, but for like I said, for any new activity, that would be for me. It's like if I'm going to evaluate whether it's viable for me, that's one of the factors I'll evaluate it against. I definitely have to expect more productivity than we're getting in order to move it forward. That doesn't necessarily mean by every staff member. I think my staff members have got it pretty easy because we have enough staff where it makes it to where the expectations aren't as high as they were in the beginning with me and my PTA and the first therapist that I hired, and then all the way up to the fourth and the fifth therapist. I think we were probably, truth be told, when we were in that 20 to 25 staff member range, we were probably even more efficient because we had to be, back then, because we were growing pretty rapidly and I was adding space and borrowing money to expand and do all of that. But it actually gets easier when you get bigger, in my opinion. But that's why you get trained too. But you expect more productivity out of your folks. Promote and then agree. You need to promote quality for sure. Okay. Well, I said it's secondary. It is, assumed that that's the case. But I would promote and agree with quality and make great efforts to compress the time considerations that's required to, execute on a quality visit. I just tend to get quality outcomes, and the time kind of comes out of it. There's, we can do a future seminar on time creation. I've done one before. Probably should do one on how you do that inside of a visit or do that inside of a meeting with the patient or with the staff member, because when you take considerations out of quality and time, you can do great things because the ability of you yourself, no mechanical factor, just you can achieve great things by just changing people's minds, changing considerations about time and quality. I put that one in as a little bit of a subjective matter, but there's a technology to that. So you want to definitely eliminate wasted time, money, and considerations. I don't know how much time you guys spend talking to people about things that, aren't the primary things that don't matter. You got to move people off of these concerns about quality and just get them to assume that they're going to do everything with high quality and at great speed, with great certainty and with great competence, because you're trying to eliminate wasted time, wasted money, wasted time on considerations, uncertainties. I just had this meeting yesterday. We had a strat plan meeting yesterday, and we covered a couple of staff members that need a little extra training, a little extra enhancement because they're uncertain, and particularly they're newer therapists, right? You have to remove uncertainties. You have to remove word tracks. And I'm not going to give you specific word tracks, but I'll give you some examples. But you need to remove incompetency. So take the maybes out. Eliminate, if you want to be more viable, just look at your day, look at your week, and look at the things that put maybes into your, in other words, either things that are undecided upon or demands for decision that someone else should be making, right? Because they're uncertain. You want to take the shoulda, woulda, couldas out of it. If I hear therapists, I still have to correct Bert, my VP Ops, if I walk through the clinic and I hear people making suggestions that have some uncertainties in them, or they're communicating in a way of saying, well, this is what we should do, or we could do this, or giving people lots of choices, right? Or asking someone else what they think about about the therapist's professional opinion, or what they think is needed, or what is going on. I tend to eliminate those things and operate off of what you know, what you can see, and what you're certain of. Well, you should do this as a owner and a senior executive. Take the maybes out and know exactly what is going to make you the most viable. And it makes it really easy to dial into production expectations when you remove maybes, when you know exactly. This is one of the reasons it's so wonderful to have an outside source working with you, whether that's in the form of a consultant or consultants. I have folks in the area of finance that deal with me. And then as I was coming up through the ranks and getting trained by survival strategies and getting, raw data on finance, I hired my accountant who was in the original, had one of the chapters in the Keys to Private Practice Success. His name is Bob Holmes. Before I even started with survival strategies, I paid Bob good money to train me as a neophyte business owner in balance sheets and income statements and statements of cash flow. And he trained my wife to do all of our finances personally and in the company. I paid him thousands of dollars to say, look, you have these discussions. I don't want to be dependent upon you. I like you. I want to be your friend. I want to go out to dinner with you. And I became a great friend with him because our kids played ball together. But I said, you need to train me so I know what's going on. I don't want to depend on you. I want to use you as my most trusted financial advisor to expand, not to just stay the same. So show me what I need to be looking at every month, because I don't want to pay you every freaking month. I want to pay you one time to show me how to do this so that I'm certain about what these numbers mean. And so I don't have to come to you and ask what they. And on top of that, and obviously getting trained by survival strategies. So what I'm telling you is I didn't just rely on a training with survival, but when you get trained and when then you don't have to ask. You just can look. You can observe and you can decide, and then you can go right into action on what you know and see. And you need to be able to do that with your staff. But you got to give them the reasons why. But definitely you have to get trained. This is a skill to get trained on. And I did it by a lot of looking with my consultants, both my trainers and my intern consultants with survival strategies. So this may sound like a pitch for guys that maybe haven't either done everything or got all their training. And yeah, it kind of is, because I attribute my success to my expanding my knowledge, because I've always had the intention to do great work. And I knew I was a good therapist, but I sucked at some of these other things until I got trained and mentored and had my nose put in it. So make decisions on what you know and what is viable and what is profitable for you. Nobody else can determine what that is. Even a survival consultant can't tell you what your liability, what your level of viability should be, right? What it should and can be. Only you. You're the one that creates the expectations. And but the gap between where you're at and where you want to be is your knowledge, and your training. It's 100%. And then your ability to apply that. And I can't stress that enough. And I can tell you these key basics are the ones that I use every day and or for sure every week. So here's the deal. I'm going to go back to this concept of those three factors that are constant to every organization: people, services, and funds. And we'll break it down, and then I'll look at one quick evaluation of one little metric evaluation tool that I use to figure out what is going to make the biggest difference in our viability and what I need to push on, what area of production I need to push on. So, we certainly in our industry, the rehab medicine industry, has such a simple publicly facing business model. If I'm talking to other owners or even talking to public in general, doesn't even have to be rehab medicine business owners, that that definitely requires your more thorough evaluation than what I'm going to tell you. But I'm going to tie it to this quantity, quality, viability thing. It's really simple. We have to drive in enough new people and deliver enough great service to them at the right quantity of service, right? And of course, quality. And we have to have the quantity and quality of new patients. I'm going to come back to that in a second. And then just collect the funds. That's what makes us viable, right? But you have to do the first two. You have to drive in enough new ones. And hopefully you're driving in not only enough new ones and or delivering enough service to the new ones you get, that they're high quality patients too, right? Because most businesses that fail, I'm not even talking about rehab medicine now, it's like they aren't delivering enough service at a high enough price point. That's it. You're just not doing it. We have to confront this as owners. It's like, well, how much are you doing? And there's how much you want to do, but there's also how much you freaking need to do. It's like, and I think that last one doesn't get confronted a lot, enough of the time. Is to like, well, great on what you want to do, but is that enough to achieve all of your goals? Because you have to see enough new people at enough of a price point, right? It's not enough just to see enough new people. You have to increase the collectible value, and it may mean having a longer term strategy to change your payer mix. And we're too Medicare dependent, and there's probably guys on here that are too heavily Medicaid dependent too. So it's not dissimilar in the pediatric sector, or at least preferred. So I've got to do something about it. So I'm going to open up in a different market. I'm going to get into another market this year, and I know how now to target non-Medicare patients with certain marketing funnels, as Nancy was talking about before. I use those funnels for patients. We get those Facebook ads and emails and Google ads and the whole shebang, and then we're pretty good at public talks. So
I like a funnel. I like
I
a
know you.
funnel.
I know you do.
I love a click funnel. I go down many a funnel and don't come out till I bought something. They work, but they don't get you to know people. And that's all. I just like to get to
Agreed.
know my people. So
Oh,
there you go.
it's a much harder close. Our outbound marketing functions, our direct response marketing are not we have to do a lot more work to get those people to arrive, and more importantly, the right people in that spectrum to arrive. But it is viable if you have a good closer on your staff. If you have someone who really can evaluate data and the people, that it works really well. But anyway, you got my point on driving in new business. It's enough of them at the right price point to do that. And then obviously delivering those services. So the quantity, quality, viability definitely comes into play to the simplicity of our model. But that's the publicly facing side. That's you looking at it for how many public do I need, and how much service I need to provide, and what should I get paid with my contracts and my various vendors. But as an owner executive and building from the inside out your team, you need enough people providing enough service, and you have to pay them, right? Not only are you doing that grossly for the organization, but then you've got to do this from the inside out. You're doing the same thing. You're working the public, you're doing the public dance, and then you've got this inside dance where now you got to handle your finding the people you need, enough of them, and most all of us, it's therapists now. And then, because we know how to train know how to train people, administrative skill and public handling skills. As far as our admin staff, they're a little easier for us. And then, providing enough service, and then, getting them to play the viability game. What's viable for them? What's viable for you? And creating that understanding. So how much and how many, how many, or how much volume, or how many patients, and how much service needs to be provided where everybody's well taken care of. So, you have to look at what do you expect or demand towards that level of viability as an owner or executive. I'm pretty dialed into that. The growth, while the growth factor is important for how many people I see, it's also important for the profits and the ability to share revenue with our staff members, not just our executives. But I want a well-paid staff, and so how many new and at what value? Like I talked about before, is it a viable value? How much service and at what value per, whether it's per episode of care or per visit, or I know it was billable hours. You'd have to do that. Either way you shake it out, you got to do the visits. How much time that takes is dependent upon coding and what the insurance companies are going to pay, and what we can collect from our patients on their responsibility. And then, on that fund side, how much profit and at what shared value with your staff. I'm always calculating in how much of that I'm willing to share. I'm working on succession planning now at 62, and I'm, because we've built and scaled over time, and we're going to go to the next level. It's going to be a lot easier now to share the upside, share a bigger percentage. Where I'm at the point where I'm going to share a bigger percentage of the upside with my guys to lock them into their future and use the company to benefit them, because that's part of my product as an owner. I want something that's valuable and exchangeable with my staff. I have to be valuable and exchangeable to them. Here's just a real, you guys have seen this before. I just took some old number. I just took some median old numbers, right? And I just want to show you how you need to tie your, what you want your viability to be or your production to be. And I'll make some basic assumptions over here on the left. So on the left side here, we've got a clinic that's seeing 50 new ones a week. This would be more of that adult outpatient orthopedic clinic, okay? Because I don't know how, I don't have the raw data to show in the pediatric realm, but this is, we do really simple math on this side, 50 new ones a week, 12 VPN stands for visits per new. If we're averaging 12 visits per new patient, which is a low average for us. This isn't what we're doing. This is old stuff, but I just took some old average numbers for discussion purposes. Let's say they were collecting $85 a visit, and they were currently seeing 2,600 new ones a year, or 31,000 visits. That would be their annual revenue at that collectible value. I just made up some expenses here. I put this clinic at a 15% profitability rate, so their expenses were this much, and they profited. They were making 397, so just shy of 400,000 a year at 15%. You can put whatever percent you want to put in this profitability box. That's the beauty behind laying out these algorithms. But everybody's got a certain number of new ones right now. Everybody's got a certain number of billable hours and or visits they're doing. Everybody's got a collectible, either collections per visit or collections per hour. Everybody's got a certain volume of new patients and patient visits occurring. Everybody's got revenue, so you can adjust these however you want. I increased the expenses by 5% over here. I'll show you this later, but let me go back to the second column. So if I increase the new patient volume by 5, if I had enough staff to see 5 new ones, and all I did was increase the visits per new, in other words, I saw each patient half a visit more, a little over half a visit more, which is 5%, 12.6 visits per patient. I increased my collections per visit, which is totally doable, by 5%. That's pretty conservative, to $89 a visit for a full year. And then the reason you don't see in here, you just see a 95 increase, because 5 times 52 would be more than 95. I just did this times how many weeks a therapist works, 49 weeks a year. But at any rate, just saw 95 more patients for the year, saw 2,700 more visits at 425, and did this for a whole year, right? Did it every week for a whole year, 5 times 49 weeks, added that many, that many visits and this much revenue per visit, that would result in 378,000 more, right? And you have, this is an a la carte menu, by the way. You could just lean into one of these things. I like the collections per visit or the new for sure. These two pay you the best, but just seeing more new patients, which is what the referral increase program helps anybody do, or PR marketing functions, and then getting the collections per visit up, which is your revenue cycle management functions. It's pretty wild, right? You go almost doubled the profitability just by seeing 5 new patients a week and leaning into this. So you can leverage an awful lot. This clinic went from 15 to only 17% profitable, but they went from 2.6 to 3 mil. I did increase the expenses down here by 5% at the bottom, and they're 17% profitable. And 15 is a pretty average in the adult market anyway. It's a pretty healthy but average profitable clinic. And so going to 17% is not a big leap, but it makes a big difference. And this is just the increase, right? And yeah, it really makes a huge difference. So my advice is, you get what you put your attention on. This viability thing is pretty important. You get what you tolerate as well. So if you're tolerating things that aren't, highly productive, you need to change that, and you definitely get what you expect, because there's nothing that increases your income more than demand for income and or efficiency or productivity, whatever term you want to use. But you need something like this to keep it objective, and then definitely tie it to the quality as a secondary factor. You can't compromise quality. I'm definitely sensitive to that. But if you know objectively that you have a certain subsection of your staff or the whole staff that are not as efficient as they could be, and they're wasting time, right? They're reasonable about their time, then you're leaving a lot on the table. You have to name what you want. You have to really want it. You have to demand it. That demand for viability, I guess, not just profitability, right, but viability. The lifeability of the company has a lot to do with how you're servicing the public and how you're servicing your staff, and what you have created for yourself and your team, and then there's an organizational component to getting that. The biggest area I got trained in was the area of management. That's one of the biggest assets of my company is Survival Strategies, from the standpoint of teaching me how to organize better, because I didn't have a problem naming what I wanted. I didn't have a problem wanting it, but I had a problem knowing how to get it. So I'm here to answer questions, Nancy. I am continually amazed sometimes how I don't run over when I make these things up, and Nancy knows that I sometimes make these things up within the last 24 hours.
I text Paul just to make sure, that, because I lose track of the calendar. I'm like, Paul, you ready for tomorrow? And he'll be like, no, not yet. So it'll be 8 o'clock at night. So I'm like, okay, but I think the first time he did that, I was like, oh gosh, let's see. But he and Diane put these together relatively, and they're so, to me, that goes to show you how trained up they are, because they could just pull this, organize it. It's when you know how to do something. It's like I could get on a video right now and tell you guys how to, butter toast, right? I would not have to think about it, look it up. Well, let me see, last time I buttered toast, what was it like? How long did I put it in the toaster? When you know things, you really know. So look to that as an example of, how trained up it is possible to be and get. And what I love about Paul and Diane is that, and pretty much everybody that I bring in, even if they're not Survival Strategies clients, or they're not other peds, they could be in the industry and stuff, I always pull in people that say they never feel like they can't learn something new. And I think the minute you decide you can't learn something, first of all, you're just annoying to deal with. I'm just going to tell you, that's my New Yorker coming out. You're just annoying, because that know best, we call it a know best. They know everything. it's like a wall. You can't contribute to somebody that knows everything. Do you ever talk to a no bestie teenager? You know, when they're in one of their moods and they're like, I know, mom, I know, they know everything. They know you can't, there's a wall and you're not getting in. It is shut down, closed for business, gone fishing, at least for today. So I'm only attracted and I only attract people that don't think that they can't learn something. So there's that. Guys, I don't want to bore you with a redundancy, but so I'm just going to say it fast. If you don't know about the upcoming event, May 4 and 5, now it is branded pediatric, but these are administrative know-how. So Carrie's putting the link up. We'll say it again. It's May 4 and 5. It's Dallas. It's the middle of the country this time. Diane was like talking about how we always put it in the middle of the country. No, we don't. We move it around. It'll be West Coast. It'll be East Coast. It'll be middle of the country. Right now, it's middle of the country. I don't think October is going to be middle of the country. I think it's going to be in Florida, as my mom calls it. Um, but with that said, guys, May 4 and 5, it's on topics that you are going through right now. It's on hiring, it's on retention. These are polled things where we know you are still having a tough time. Culture, developing that. And then, of course, we have the meet and greet and all that. Hotel is like 94 and 96% sold out. So there's all of that. If you guys have questions for Paul, please. And just so you know, I just want to make sure you guys know this. Those of you that might, when Paul's like, gosh, this is a pitch for survival. I'm just going to tell you, the Paul and Diane are not paid to do these webinars. They are not. Paul, are you paid to do this webinar?
Nope.
Like, wait, where's the checks? Didn't we discuss? Yeah, there's no checks. That's it. They pay this forward. They really, truly, truly want you to have what they have. But make no mistake, guys, don't be a nuggeteer. Don't think, well, I'm going to listen to Paul and I'm going to get what Paul has. No, you won't. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but no, you won't. So that's my pitch on the pitch. If you guys have any questions for Paul, please let him know. I know we've had some of you for like 2 hours now. Please answer Carrie's poll. Super important. Even if you did it in the last one, if you could just quickly type up same thing, whatever, that would help us. We track each one of these separately and we keep hardcore stats because Carrie Lee is genius. Any questions for Paul before we jump off? Anybody going once? It's 1:00. 1:00 EST, about to pour rain here. Anybody got anything? We got some new people on here. I think they would have some questions, but Paul, you do a pretty good job of, you do a pretty good job. I'm going to let the rest of you guys go. We're going to see you next time. This is a once a month dealio. Lemonade is twice a month, and this is once a month. So we'll see you next time. Paul, as always, amazing, good stuff. Thanks.
Thanks. Hey,
Thanks so much.
scalability next month. We're going to go over scalability.
Scalability. I love that. That's my favorite funnel. Learn how to scale your practice. I'm like, oh my gosh, scale. You guys don't even have a foundation. Where do you get scaling? Get a foundation first. All right. We will talk about scaling next month. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.